Chair Moffat, we're live.
Thank you very much for that. Welcome to the meeting of the Haliburton County Rail Trail Roundtable. We haven't met for an awful long time, so we may be a bit rusty in our processes. I would ask Madam Clerk for a roll call, please.
Warden Danielson.
I'm present.
Chair Moffat.
Present.
Councillor Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Burton.
Present.
Thank you.
Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest on the matters before us today? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting? Warden Danielson and Councillor Burton.
Be it resolved that the minutes from the October 8th, 2020 meeting of the Haliburton County Rail Trail Steering Committee be adopted as circulated.
All in favor? That is carried. I just want to take a minute to sort of regroup. We haven't met in an awful long time. And the purpose, to remind ourselves that the purpose of our role is, as a working group, is to update the plan from being a study that was full of recommendations and suggestions to it being more reflective of current practice, which is happening at the county table. So Craig and Amanda had been our staff leads on this, and they had done the bulk of the work in the background at the direction of this group. And it was kind of like, you know, one fell over and one fell out and the next one rolled over. So Craig had left then and Robert joined us. I met with Robert and Amanda some time ago. And that's where the chart before you today came from, because Amanda had done the background work and consolidated the work done to date, but in text form. And just because I'm the chair and I like charts, so I said, well, I prefer it in a chart so you can see it side by side. So I did that, and then Robert had another go at it. So that's where we are today. So we just want to make sure we're still headed in the right direction. Some things have been moved around a little bit. So what I want to do is discuss the red sections. We're just going to do a quick review. Some of the first sections we've already talked about, and I think the language is probably what this group wanted. Just going to do a quick review of the red sections. There's some that some sections that are to be changed that remain blank because I don't know where you want to go on it. And we also need to talk about a couple things. We had talked previously about having consideration for the Friends of the Rail Trail research. Unfortunately, request to acquire that. We don't have it, so I don't know what our plan is around that. And additionally, Robert had suggested too, we need to think about what it is we're going to call this document. I don't know if it's still a master plan. It's more like a framework or a set of guiding principles. So we need to think about that as well. And the other thing I just wanted to point out is I've had a couple of inquiries about work on the trail and opportunities in the trail. And just to reiterate that this group is meeting to update the plan, not to manage the trail. The management of the rail trail still lives at the county table, and that any information or opportunities around partnerships or grants or complaints about the surfacing, that stuff all still lives with county council. This is not the new management committee for the rail trail. So that being said, I guess we can just go straight to the new business. The business arising is the updates, which is the new business. So we'll just keep going there. Andrea.
Thanks. Just for clarification, that's a really great update because it has been a year since we were able to meet. So was referring to the request for the Friends of the Rail Trail group's research. Sorry, did that actually happen yet? Or is it to happen? Like, have we put in the request and we haven't received it? If you could just clarify that, I didn't quite catch it.
I'll let Michelle speak to that because I believe, Michelle, you had sent something. Can you speak to that?
Thank you, Chair Moffat. Actually, it was Pam who reached out to Pamela Marsails and did receive some communication. But actually, respectfully, I'm going to turn it over to Robert because if you've had some communications with Pam in regards to what she received, we did receive some email correspondence back from Pamela, but not a document per se.
Right, nothing much more to add than that. There is no formal report at this time, but we'll follow up with Pamela just to confirm and inform the committee of that result. But there was some correspondence back a few months ago and there was no report received.
Okay, Liz?
After the presentation was made by the Friends of the Rail Trails consultant to County Council, I had a discussion with Pamela Marcellus and said that we required the report itself, and was told that it was an unwieldy document in a number of pieces and was difficult to send, but she did promise to send it to me, and I have not received it. And honestly, I'm reluctant for us to. We can't act on it until we actually receive the report, because I think that there was a lot more information supposedly in the report than what we received as a delegation to County Council.
Yeah, thanks for all those updates. And I don't understand about a document being, unwieldy. We deal with big documents that are, many, many hundreds of pages and, different formats all the time. So I'm not sure what that's about, but okay, well, and I also don't want to hold up. I mean, the agreement was, we were asked if we would consider it at this table. We said, yes, the presentation was made, requests have been made for the document. It has not been received. I'm not sure what we're supposed to do around that, but keep going in our own work here as is presented today. But thank you for that. Does that answer your question succinctly, Andrea?
Correctly,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. So I think if we just go to the document that was attached, the chart, and I think, remember, the other comment somebody said was, well, you're slicing the plan down to nothing. And again, by way of background is, the plan is extremely out of date. I know I have asked numerous times at the county table over many years that it's out of alignment with work that's been done. So the work on the trail has advanced, but the plan that props it up is really out of date. So there's no point in keeping in the plan the coulds and shoulds and mights and opportunities and pictures, and because a lot of that work it's already been done, or it's not relevant anymore. So it will be a much smaller document, I think, because it will be an up-to-date document that's reflective of the work that's been done by the Public Works Department now for quite a number of years. I think especially since the public consultation process a number of years ago. Okay, so in the introduction, there isn't really much here in the red side, but what the suggestion is that it could be just that generalized who we are and how we got here. There was in the document in front of you, it says could include things like that was a piece that was pretty descriptive about how many roads it crosses and culverts and whatnot. This is just a generalized intro, and that it could provide the history, much like a staff report would, that we often see at our council tables, where it would just talk about the history of the rail trail and how we got to where we are today, just as an introduction. That was the intent. It has not yet been written, but could be written if the group still supports that generalized introduction. And thoughts on that, Andrea?
So if it is a general introduction with a little tidbit of history, would it be beneficial to pull that history into it and say the rail trail was built in 18 whatever, and operated as a fully operational railway from Haliburton to Lindsay between these periods? It was decommissioned blank date, put in insert date, and was transferred to entitled to the Haliburton County in insert date. It would be probably a total of 4 sentences, 5, but it's just that,
yeah, that's what I was thinking. And then we just make similarly brief references to, the master plan was created in 2003, the community engagement occurred in 2012.
Yes.
And that public work, like it says in here, public works reports were introduced to keep track of the engagement outcomes. The roundtable was created. It's pretty simple. This is not a historical document, but we could do exactly what you're saying, is just say, this is how it started. This is what's been, we're not going to talk about every piece of gravel laid on it over the years. It's just a generalized overview of how we got here.
Exactly. And like just to, some of you are also see me on social media, know that I did a little bike trip in earlier in September in Quebec, in the Laurentians outside of Montreal. And so just wherever it talks about it, even on their information pages, this was an original railway that was built in such and such time and opened up the Laurentian area and what it was for. So it's just a bit of, like you say, it's not meant to be a historical document, but at least the context of how it came to be in the county's hands and what the intentions are for it now that it be as a recreational trail.
Yeah, and I think that's yeah, I just not jotted that down. So if we're okay with that part of it, then that can be crafted by whomever to be assigned, and we'll I saw that look, Andrea, and we'll carry on from there if that suits. Then the next section, which in red is called section 1, goals and objectives. Oh. Yes, ma'am.
Just before we go there, in the it's to be assigned. Like that's maybe a bit too open. I just wanted to acknowledge that we're still suffering some shortages of staff in the county, and that it may take a little more time than some people think it might.
It'll be me.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's. I think. Look at Andrea's face. I think that's what that's about. Is
But I mean, that's an assumption that it shouldn't have to be, although you are likely the best person to go about doing it.
Look, I will regret having said that, and it shouldn't necessarily be me, and I don't care if it is. But given that we do have some staff shortages and nobody's sitting around looking for a job, the best way to get it done might be if I just keep in touch with Michelle and Robert, and it's a little bit of a group effort. I think it's all hands on deck to get it done. And if parts of this are taken from my hands, I will not be upset. So I think we just need to get through this. You know, we're not writing the Bible here. We're putting together the framework of the guiding principles of the trail so that it just matches what's currently happening on the trail through Public Works and other departments. So it shouldn't be. So I can work with staff on that, and if somebody else wants to actually pen the words, it's fine by me. But if that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I just thought we needed to maybe clarify that.
Yeah, I think, good point. I think that's fair. It's certainly, I have no interest in owning this process or document, but let's just get her done. On the third page, I'm sorry, I didn't number the pages. What is now under in red called section 1, goals and objectives. We had previous conversation, and this is kind of where we landed as a group going back over a year. Again, nice and simple, that instead of saying that it was going to do specific things, I recall that the roundtable wanted it to be a little bit higher level, just to say that, so higher level, and then the activities then plug in, as opposed to in each section being very detailed with what was going to happen on a Tuesday, or if it rained, or in relation to a certain partnership.
Just
so
one question about that section.
Yeah.
Under to remain attentive to the needs of permitted trail users. I'm just wondering about the word permitted.
I think it's permitted, not permitted. Allowed as opposed to those who have paid permits. So we can use a different word.
Yeah, it's just a little bit confusing. It sounds like it could be only people that are allowed, that have permits. And you know, I know that there's a seasonal issue as well. So
authorized, supported, approved.
I would to remain attentive to the needs of trail users, period.
Okay.
Well, I do like some kind of word in there. I didn't read it that it was permitted. I read it as permitted. Is that interesting, the English language? But I think we do need a word ahead of the word trail. If Carol, I'm not sure what you had said, it allowed or no.
Well, to make it easier, the new section 3 is titled approved and prohibited uses.
So approved.
So approved would be the consistent language word.
Yeah, because that's the whole, to me, a bit of the whole point is that, for instance, someone driving their car down the rail trail is not approved unless it's a county vehicle, of course. I'm just going to close the window. Somebody appears to be cutting grass. Who knew? Just one sec.
But I think that's a good grab, Liz, because it could be permitted or permitted.
Yeah,
Welcome.
and there, you know, two of us have read it differently.
Dave?
Yeah, no, I certainly agree, Carol. I was trying to think of another word to use and instead of permitted. And I just haven't come up with one yet, but
Authorized?
we wouldn't dare have license.
No, and Dave, what I was suggesting is that 2 pages down in the document or 3 pages down in what is now section 3, the title of that was and remains approved and prohibited uses. So
Yes.
in terms of consistency of language, then the appropriate word under that bullet should be approved. Then it matches the other section.
Perfect.
Okay, yep.
And you know, keep in mind that we can we're putting together a document that's going to go to county council for review, and other members of council could see the comparisons that have been made and the changes and offer up some other suggestions. So, I mean, this is not what we agree at this table is not, it's not a done deal. It's our recommendations to the group. Okay, so I'm going to say that that's okay. On the next page, what is now in red, section 2 is guiding principles. And again, it was the same. We have previously discussed this, and it had landed in the red language that's there. And again, the idea was to trim it down so that it wasn't trying to be everything for every possible problem that could arise. Again, keeping in mind that the original document was a proposed plan for development, and we're years into that whole process. And I know that there's a couple of places in here where there's, you know, have regard for best practices, and it says, you know, more words or / commitment. I'm not sure if anybody has some thoughts on that. You know, have regard for best practices regarding multi-use trails, perhaps.
Yeah.
I wonder if Robert has an input on that one for what sort of best practices if we need something after that.
I mean, it's wide open whereby you could go all the way from enforcement to environmental to multi-use trail practices.
You know, we talked, I think that's a really good point, because we talked before about making sure that this document was high level enough that we could then refer to what would plug into it. So based on what Robert has just said, we need to ensure that, you know, enforcement and environment and stewardship and other points of purpose plug in somewhere else. So if in this section we just said, have regard for best practices regarding, you know, multi-use trail systems or successful multi-use trail systems, something like that, then we need to remember what other items to plug in. If we're going to take things out, I'm going to do like grade school show and tell. But if we're going to take things out of here, is there anything in here that we need to remember to plug in somewhere else in the document in the red sections? So that's a good point, Robert. Liz?
I do like adding, though, the best practices for multi-purpose or multi-use trails, because that's, you know, where it's the multi-use factor that causes some of the difficulty. So I think we need to add that.
Okay.
And it's still a wide open to cover any number of things, as Robert says.
So let's just keep that in our mental parking lots to make sure that the things that we want, the benchmarks for successful multi-use trails we need to make sure that they're addressed somewhere in the other sections of the document. So we don't have anything sort of hanging out there in the wind. Liz?
The only other comment on that section, just for consistency, is the last bullet. I think we don't need to say the county will. I think we can just say foster and strengthen partnerships. and continue on with that, but just leave out the county will.
Oh, because it's provide, have, ensure,
Yeah,
and then foster. So they're all action words. That's a good catch. Thank you. Can I take us back up to the third bullet? Ensure the natural landscape and cultural heritage are considered considered means, I thought about it and dropped it. So considered and encouraged, supported, preserved, ensured.
Promoted and protected.
I like promoted and protected, but if you say protected and then somebody has to cut down a butterfly bush, is someone going to say, well, you're not protecting that? Like you can go wrong at every step. So that's the challenge, is making sure that the language is firm enough, but not so firm that you're setting yourself up for failure. Andrea?
What about something like the natural landscape and cultural heritage are a priority to be protected? Like it does, no, yeah, just are a priority.
Preserved and celebrated?
Yeah, I don't even, yeah. Because you're right. For instance, if we have to put a culvert in, equipment has to get in and it has to dig up, and there might be some, nice little sapling there growing on the side that has to get done. But if you're careful, it really, what you're trying to say here is that we're being careful. We have regard for, which we also said that in the next bullet, have regard for the safety and conflict, among other use. But so, yeah, I'm trying to wordsmith as we go. It's not working. Ensure the natural landscape and cultural heritage are.
Well, preserved and protected is the most generalized thing. And what you just said, Andrea, I think is a really good point. The fact is that in order to maintain infrastructure, you have to repair and fix infrastructure that sometimes require moving things, crushing things, damaging things in order to get the work done. I think the idea is that it's preserved and protected within the extent possible of managing infrastructure. I think that's inherent.
Mhm.
You think?
Okay.
So going back to what Liz said, maybe preserved and protected is the right thing to say, knowing full well. Like I can say I want to protect the ecosystem of my lawn, but I still have to clean stuff up or not. So, and again, we can land on that today, and it's still going to go to county council.
I like it. I wrote that in there.
Would we say protected to the greatest extent possible? Would that kind of cover us, when it comes to things like having to go in there, having to do some work that would, maybe damage some butterfly friendly plant or creature?
Well, and it's not just us. It's also about making decisions for uses in the future that align with this. So if somebody says, I'd like my backhoe club to be able to use the rail trail, we might say, we don't believe that matches bullet number 3 of the guiding principles. But yeah, Liz, you could add to the greatest extent possible, but I think, is this a document for what the county's going to do on it itself, or what the county believes should be done on it by all?
Well, therein lies the problem, because we can say that we're going to protect it and preserve it, but we do know that we're going to have to, do some work, and from time to time there will be things done on the trail that people will be upset about, and yet we still have to do them. I don't know how to differentiate that bullet between what we are required to do on the rail trail and what others might want to do on the rail trail.
And so then do you just split the difference and leave it as preserved and protected, knowing that the required maintenance as the owner of the trail has contained within it the inherent opportunity to do damage, but it doesn't mean that we're going to deliberately run around smacking things down and crushing things. It just means that if we have to replace a culvert, stuff's going to get dug up. That's what happens, and then it'll grow back. So, sorry, I have to close a window because apparently it's time to weed whack.
Yeah, I know. All these maintenance people working at our home,
All these
AKA husbands.
retired people doing their lawn maintenance.
Okay,
during the day.
but I like what you just said about, that if you have to put in the culvert, but with that guiding principle in, it's saying we'll do this with the utmost care. We're not just going to take the fill that we have to take out where the culvert's going to go and just throw it willy-nilly over here. We're going to go in with the things with regard for the natural landscape, and then also, if there was cultural heritage, something there of cultural importance. So I think just stop at preserved and protected.
After this conversation, that's what I think. Just leave it. I think that was a good suggestion, Liz, and I think we run the risk of running into more trouble by trying to further define it.
Yeah. Agreed.
Okay, so those, is there anything else on the left-hand side that we think needs to be pulled out that wouldn't otherwise get plugged in somewhere else? Pulling out and plugging in left, right, and center. Okay, then I'm just going to say that we're okay with that section, given the fact that we've been through this in detail in the past. The new section 3 is approved and prohibited uses. We didn't get very far, so there was a little bit of wordsmithing done here, not in terms of changing anything, but just sort of reorganizing it. The currently agreed upon uses are still the same. And I didn't know the name of the Kawartha ATV club, so there's a question mark there. Hi.
He's just full of enthusiasm.
Well, and then the retired neighbors come to borrow your washing machine and do their laundry. So I don't know what else. This is very similar to what it was under section 10, the recommended trail uses, and I believe it reflects what is currently happening on the trail now. Anybody have any other thoughts on that? And I don't know. And if it's not correct, somebody else will tell us it's not an accurate reflection of what's currently happening on the trail, but I believe it is.
Would we say as per county council? Wouldn't
Yeah.
we just, yes?
Well,
I mean, this is a county council document.
okay, yeah.
So, I mean, to me, we would just say the current uses are.
Yeah, because the document will be dated, so it's then obviously the current use is as of the date of the document. So fair enough, less words. And then I think it's important, given ongoing discussions and various suggestions, that we do acknowledge that the county will continue to monitor the uses and may modify. I think it's just important to keep an open mind there, because you just never know. Things change all the time. There's increases in certain uses and decreases in others. And I think it's important just to acknowledge that the current use list is not necessarily set in stone forever and ever, never to be touched. That by being a progressive government, we need to acknowledge that things change, and they could change.
You know, it's kind of a shame that cross-country skiing isn't allowed.
Yeah, I mean, that's a discussion that's been held over and over, and I think it's what they call an incompatible land use. And look, people cross-country ski on the rail trail all the time. It's just not promoted.
Because you can walk on the rail trail at the same time as an ATV can be on it. So, I mean, anyway, I know we can.
But it's motorized, because then, but the snowmobiles go faster. I believe the speed limit for snowmobiles is higher even. Robert might remember that offhand. What's the speed limit for a snowmobile? Is it 50 kilometers an hour?
Isn't the speed limit on the rail?
No, I think ATVs and snowmobiles have different speed limits.
I think they might be different. Yeah, Robert, do you know by chance?
Sorry, not offhand.
I thought one was 30, one was 50, but either way, the snow machines is two-way traffic, and it's very heavily used in the wintertime and then groomed. So unless we did a side-by-side path, for in some sections, if there was the ability to do that, that's a whole nother kettle of fish, it would be really hard to do cross-country skiing. And thank goodness we do have like several places in the county to ski.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. That's ringing a vague bell for me now that this conversation, this has sort of been asked and answered in the past, that it is about speeds, two-way traffic, grooming. And I know people who there's conflicts all the time on HCSA trails. People think, oh, there's a trail, I'm going to go cross-country skiing just after the groomer's been by, and there's sometimes conflicts there. Liz?
I would like to find out for sure about the speed limits and if there's different speed limits, just for my information. I think that the conflict remains the same both summer and winter. I respectfully disagree, but that's okay. I mean, we can carry on.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little star here, and I'm going to put cross-country skiing, just verify. I think Andrea is right that the conversations that have been held in the past are, I think it's partially contained in the language of the agreement, which is with the HCSA. It's an exclusive use via that agreement. So if there were to be a modification of users in the winter, that agreement would have to be modified through negotiation with the HCSA. So
yeah, I agree. I think it is part of the agreement with the HCSA.
So we'll just verify. And in the end, we're just presenting options to the rest of County Council to discuss, and that could come back. That could be discussed further by that group. Is there in the prohibited uses? Is there anything else there that we need to add? Or
Just
remove?
the
Go ahead,
last
Ann.
bullet, just about hunting, because there actually are quite a number of hunt camps that ATVs and people use to access, but it's adjacent to. So that's not saying this, just to clarify that, there's hunting adjacent to, but in that 100-foot strip corridor, there's no hunting. So if you had a hunt camp on either side or something, I don't know. Is that what that's just to be super clear?
that you can't hunt, you can't take your during hunting season, you can't ride your ATV down the trail and hunt from the trail.
Yeah, okay.
That's the same as hunting from a roadway, which is not permitted, and I believe Dave could confirm that. And similarly, you don't want what you're saying is no, you can't shoot across a trail.
Yeah. Good.
Dave, Mr. Hunter Man?
I'm certainly not a hunter, but I wonder if we should change that to shooting.
Discharge of firearms.
Yeah.
Discharge of firearms. Because I think there are people in the county that shoot year round.
But there's also people who hunt by bow. So how about hunting or discharging of firearms? Not that I want to see a bow hunter on the rail trail, but we have to make sure we're clear here too.
For sure.
So
I guess my point was that, it's all season, not just hunting season.
Yeah.
So maybe it's discharge of firearms and or hunting by any means from or across a trail corridor will not be permitted.
Perfect. Because I'm not sure that the bow hunting is a bow considered a firearm? I don't think so.
I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, so I like that wording, Carol.
Okay,
Good.
so we'll add that there. Okay, so anything else we want to consider at that section? Liz?
Prohibited uses, it says off-road vehicles. We allow some off-road vehicles.
And so there were changes in the off-road vehicle uses that our municipalities all adopted, and I can't recall because it's been so long since we've met whether those ministry directed changes came during our hiatus or before. So good point.
But I mean, that's suggesting like it isn't an ATV is an off-road vehicle. And yet they're allowed.
I don't think I think an ATV is an ATV and an ORV is side by side and other like, but we can get some clarification on that. But because I'm not sure.
So
Dave?
you need clarity.
Carol, I would like to get clarification on it, because I'm not 100% sure what off-road vehicles are. Have an idea, but I'm not sure.
Not now that there's been some changes made.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. So we'll get that clarification because, you know, as everybody knows, each of our councils went through that and decided what roads ORVs and ATVs are and aren't allowed on. And the ORV expansion was done within the last year or so, just prior to COVID, I think. So that's almost 2 years. Good Lord. Anyway, we'll get some clarification on that. Maybe something Robert could do for us. It's got to be in the file somewhere. Other than that, is there anything in there that we think we need to take a double check at? Okay. The only other, so if we turn the page, there's a special permits section, new and approved. Oh, it's proposed to be included in the new section 5. Okay, so we don't need to talk about that. So there was a new section on the left-hand side. You'll see that a year ago, almost to the day, the Roundtable had asked for 2 new sections to replace inventory and analysis and opportunities and constraints, because we wanted to specifically include the progress that's made in terms of promotion and marketing and partnerships and whatnot. Then, and I can't recall, I'm not sure that it matters, where this language came from. I'm not sure if it came from Amanda or not. That it's just a general statement that the county will promote points of interest, and we have since received that money that the points of interest are, or the historical points are going to be done. So again, it's underway. We have a foundational document that's catching up with work that's already being done. So I guess the question is, does what that says accurately reflect what you want in a section called marketing and promotions?
Definitely like, oh, sorry.
Just for lack of anything else. Dave, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that goes hand in hand with what Andrea more or less opened up with the historical events that have happened over the years, and then we can take an opportunity here to probably promote them.
Yeah, and we have talked about, signage, and we know even it's just a little piece, but when we did the community exchange, there was lots of suggestions that we have better signage, and we know that extends to the trail. We've had those conversations before. This is a bit of a motherhood statement. It's just saying we're going to do the best we can, because I think industry trends and current market analyses in terms of tourism and users and cultures will, various users' cultures will dictate what promotion takes place. So I think Amanda had said, or somewhere one version said, and the county will produce like a paper guide. It's like, really, a paper guide in 2021? I don't think so. People would look at something on a phone. So the idea is just to write language that makes a commitment, but allows the county and its partners to be flexible enough in how it delivers the information or the promotions or the opportunities or the vistas, because they might change, or the way in which people choose to receive information might change, and we want to be attentive and adaptable to that, I would think. But I guess the question is it too motherhoody? Is it too generalized? Or is it just enough?
So I'll jump in next. No, I like it. And one thing I just want to point out that I particularly like is that county departments will work together. That, we were bringing Amanda in before. We sort of, you've got public works, but that's the function of the, getting the job done on the ground, but then there's the tourism. So now that we're going at the county in the direction of an economic development director. So that can change things too. And I think it's great to ensure that the county departments work together, because you never know when, obviously finance has to come in, but this could be economic development. It could be all of those things.
Mhm.
So I like that. It's not a criticism, a compliment.
And remember, this can always be changed. I would imagine, and I just thought of this now, we haven't been in any big fat rush to get this done. We have an economic development person starting who will then oversee the implementation of the new marketing manager, and those two folks might have something different to say. So we could hang on, we could do the work we're going to do, get the clarifications we need, and hang on a little bit. This document has been very out of date for so many years that a little while longer is not going to matter much, but it might make more sense to let those two people get their feet under them and have a look at this either before or after it goes to county, just to make sure we have the right input from the right people. Andrea?
Or not, because by putting in this new section and updating the plan, it's just another way to look at it. It's just nice. So the very thing says right there that all county departments will work together. So for instance, bringing the new economic director, I'm not even saying it right, but you know who I mean, up to date with some of the things that we've going on. But I don't think that would change the language here, actually. So that's just my thought, is that I do like it a little bit motherhood, and I do like it a little bit broad. And we know that this is, an opportunity to do some more promotion of what we have or what it could be. And so I don't know that we would need to, it would change any wording if we had new staff have fresh eyes at that. I think they would, it's in there.
Okay. Thoughts from Liz or Dave?
No, I think it's okay the way it is right now.
Okay.
And I do as well, Carol.
Okay, well then, we'll I'm going to capitalize the R and the T on rail trail, and other than that, we'll leave it as is. The only thing that I could think that we might, the last sentence, to your point, Andrea, it says that the departments will work together to share information about closures, conditions, and seasons. But what it doesn't say is they'll work together around opportunities and events and promotions. That would
Let's add that.
That would widen it even more. Because I think, if I recall correctly, again, I feel, it's so long ago since we had these conversations. I think the intent around that was to ensure that the rail trail wasn't managed in a silo, that everybody had a hand in it, so that if there was something happening through marketing, that they check with PW, who says, yeah, there's no closures for a special event that weekend, that it's this group effort to make sure that it's managed and operated as best as possible for the public. So if we just add in, we want to say that all the departments will work together to share information about, opportunities, events, closures, conditions, changing seasons. Like, we want to make it, we want the departments to work together on everything, not just on public work stuff.
Absolutely. I like adding that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's okay. Operations and maintenance. So this, I think, on the left-hand side, this is one of the changes. It was going to be called operations, but the question is, operations and maintenance may be better. And I think this came from a conversation that was held. I think that might have been a suggestion from Craig, and I'm not going to put Robert on the spot, because we have to remember Robert is fairly new and he doesn't have the history we do. So we have to make sure we don't ask him questions that throw him under the bus about what he might not yet know about the rail trail. So the suggestion is that operations and maintenance is a better overall section. And this is where it does specifically say that it shall be operated and maintained by the County of Haliburton through the Public Works Department. Because the Public Works Department does the majority of the work on it, or it's under their purview at the direction of council. So I think we need to say that in the first three bullets, that what's happened under Craig's watch is the inspection of the culverts and things it's not handled separately. It's just part of what they do. So when they do the bridges and culverts inspections, that the culverts and the rail trail are inspected at the same time. So this is acknowledging that all of that work has been folded into the Public Works Department as part of their regular course of duties. The rail trail is another asset under their purview. And I think it's always been that way, but this just sort of lays it out. Thoughts, Liz?
Just a question. Robert, do we have a compactor? Roller, something like that?
I'm not sure what equipment we have, but you mean one to use on the rail trail itself?
Yeah. I'm just thinking about the, I know that Andrea's commented a couple of times about when we do put an overlay of granular material there, it's a little bit rougher, looser. It needs, it kind of needs packing or compacting might help a lot. I'm recognizing that gets ripped up by motorized vehicles, but still, I just wonder if we do have a compactor.
Well, in general terms, what we're doing right now with the contracts, we're doing base repairs and applying granite screenings, which to get compacted. And the idea being that overuse, like you mentioned, things get mixed up. So we regrade, and our plan going forward will be that continual maintenance where we'll be topping up the granite screenings that will get compacted and hopefully have a good surface from end to end. So I think the work started in the north and made it about halfway. We're trying to finish the south end right now, and we're going to be topping up the north end. So I can check with our maintenance people on what equipment we might use in between, but typically we contract out that maintenance grading in the spring and the fall. So that's contracted out. As for what equipment we might use ourselves, I have to double check on that.
But when you say it's compacted, how?
The contractors are placing the screenings and they actually have a compactor that they're
They do. Okay.
So when it's placed, it is, but over time, things might loosen up, and I just have to check on what our standard practices on how we get back and to maintain that.
Thank you.
Sorry, I gotta change pages again now. Is there anything that we think we're missing there under operations and maintenance? And that might be something that that Robert can speak to because it's his bailiwick. Have we misstated anything or have we missed anything? The idea was just to say that it's to recognize that it's maintained by the county through the Public Works Department.
I think it looks very thorough through the chair. And
okay, and then it does at the very last sentence says maintenance activities shall be carried out to be consistent with the design criteria and standards. What design criteria and standards? So the original plan had a whole section about what that was going to look like. We've just talked about best practices. And I do know that there are concerns with granite screenings as opposed to limestone screenings. That's not, that there are some concerns there. And I think in speaking to Robert yesterday, it's because granite we can get locally and limestone we can't. Is that correct?
that's correct.
So is there, and I know not of screenings, do granite and limestone compact differently that is more beneficial to some users than others? Like, is the only reason we're using compacted granite screenings because we can get them locally, or because are they equally as good for multi-use trail as limestone, I guess is the question.
I believe so, yes, but I want to verify that. I don't believe there's any significant difference between either product. It's just a local use.
Okay, Andrea, do you know by chance?
I don't know personally, but I have had people text me and message me that know, and I have ridden, never not driven a ATV, but ridden a bike on limestone, ridden a bike on the granite, and limestone, in my only humble opinion, not knowing trail use, is much better. So that is something that I had concern about. That bullet says the preferred trail surface is, and specifically stating in this document what it is, because I'd like to be a bit more blue sky thinking and actually have the best surface treatment that we can get, not because it's local or not local, but we really, before I want to support that, it says the material that I feel confident that is the best material. And I just know from riding the Victoria Rail Trail compared to our rail trail, sorry to say, but limestone's 100 times better. It almost goes cement-like. It really does pack down a little bit, probably from some equipment, but also just from natural use over time with the weight of vehicles, etc. And you know, we all know that from the Kinmount South is also a multi-use trail with ATV vehicles, motorized and bicycles, and it is you know, a better surface. So I just would like to, Robert, perhaps to do some research on that. And if it is a cost factor, then that goes to county council to decide whether.
Well, I had an exchange with an interested user and not a very happy user over the last couple of days, particularly yesterday, lamenting a potential, you know, I'll just say it out loud, potential waste of the grant we just got because we're putting granite screenings down. And that was his concern, is they're not as good as limestone. You got a big fat grant and you just put a whole bunch of, you just wasted your grant on granite screenings. They're not as good. So why did we do that?
Which I probably might have been in touch with the same person. However, at the beginning of this meeting, we said we're trying to create the plan, and that is a conversation that you know, we can bring up at a council meeting. But for now, for the sake of the plan, putting in compacted granite screening at that top bullet on that page, before we put that in, we need to do the research of what the best trail surface is, and not limit ourselves to the name of the product or the type of product.
So maybe it's compacted screenings appropriate to the majority of users, or appropriate to the best use of maybe that's just a little language thing there. And you're right. I mean, if I don't know anything about rail trails, I don't know anything about granular screenings. If it was suggested we put granite down and it wasn't the right thing to do, I don't know from granite screenings. So that's really unfortunate. If it should have been limestone, that's even more unfortunate. But you're right, Andrea, that's a conversation. County council needs to make a commitment to its surface, whatever that may be. Yes. And if you're right, and if it's a money thing, then maybe less gets done each year over a longer period of time to get it the way it should be.
I know we're supposed to put our hands up, and I apologize for getting a little more conversational, but that's what I'd like to see. For instance, we're not going to put that it's a 3 inches or 2 inch, whatever it is, of hot asphalt, which I just wrote in sections of Quebec where they seem to have a bottomless pit of funds for recreational money. However, lots of it was also just a surface treat granite. It was fine. I don't know limestone, but let's do the research so that we have the knowledge and before we commit ourselves to what type of screenings it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree, Liz.
I completely agree. I don't want us to limit it. I've seen sections of the rail trail that if I was a cyclist, I would not be a happy camper at all. And I don't cycle on the rail trail, but I can see very well that it would be difficult in some areas. And I'd like us to be putting down the best surface possible.
Okay, I'm going to suggest then that sentence say the preferred surface is compacted granular screenings appropriate to the highest standard achievable.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Compacted
granular screenings
appropriate
to the highest standard achievable. And we know and need to explain that if we want the best, we may have to go at it more slowly over more years. But I'm sad and kick myself for, it's very easy to say, well, I don't know about granular screenings, but I voted for them, didn't I? And so did you guys. So I'm kind of annoyed about that, but
I'm more annoyed at myself. So there, because I do ride my bike on there, and I have reached out to Robert a few times, and So that's what's happening. It doesn't mean to say but anyway, this is a really good step, and I'm glad.
Well, and let's just remember, I think it's a good thing to make a commitment to, and we'll need to speak to this when this document comes to county council to say, if it's our intent to be the best we can be, then we need to make that commitment right at the front end and make sure we do it going forward.
Robert, I don't know what the agenda is for next Wednesday, but maybe is there a report on because Carol, we may have talked to the same person. The base is limestone. That's what I don't understand. So maybe to bring us up to speed, so we are fully aware of the project that's currently taking place on the rail trail. Maybe we can just get ourselves up to speed on that on Wednesday if possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment, Andrea. I know that, COVID has, interrupted thought patterns and lifestyles and progress for everybody, including us. And I think there was something on an agenda about the ISIP grant. And I don't know whether I wrote to Liz and or Mike and said, well, when did that happen? And then you get the email back and said, well, you voted on it about 6 months ago. It's like, oops. And so it's very easy for anybody watching to just say, oh, well, then you guys aren't doing your jobs. But, we deal with an awful lot of things. And if we missed on this, then that is most regrettable. But we're going to make a commitment to do something a little bit different going forward. So let's find out, Robert, which one is preferable. The answer is probably sitting in one of our inboxes right now. But it seems to me from what I've heard that it is limestone. And we would need to know, as Andrea said, Robert, if we could have an update on what is the most compelling reason for the direction that we've gone, and are there any reasons why we shouldn't change that direction going forward? Just sort of a bit of an overview of, how we got here. Did we mess up? Yes, no. And what we can do going forward. If everyone agrees with that.
I'll discuss with the clerk and see if we can get something on a late report, or maybe do a verbal, but we'll get something for you.
I think the warden could probably approve a late report, but you might have to talk to that person.
Carol,
Yeah, Dave, go ahead.
Somewhere in here, maybe this isn't the place for it. I wonder if we should be, when you mentioned COVID, if we should have something in there about Ontario health regs or whatever are in place at all times on our trail, or we should come up with something, or maybe stay out of that one. I'm not sure, but I just wonder if we should maybe spell that out.
And so if you were to create that might fall under, if we have a section around, we're running out of sections pretty quickly here. Risk management, it might fall under risk management, so we don't have anything written for risk management. We have often spoken about the need for a risk management section. Risk management section could include expectations of conduct, and you'd have to make it generalized, Dave, so that it would say something that conduct of users shall be in keeping with any relevant public health recommendations at the time. Yep. Like that's kind of, you can almost drive a bus through that, but it still works.
Or provincial guidelines or something.
Yeah, because then it's always there. So I think that's a good point, Dave. Yeah.
Carol,
go ahead.
Still within the operations and maintenance, and I don't know if it's somewhere else in the plan, but one of the things that you and I've just said, oh, somebody reached out to you and somebody reached out to me, which is fine. That's what us as county councillors are there for. However, do we state it anywhere in the document, the mechanism for reporting a concern, highlighting something? Hey, I went for a walk and there's a tree across the trail. Like, it's not a complaint, it's just so is there a mechanism, and should that be within the plan for the public to communicate directly to the county staff, not their counselor, because it's, just say tree across the trail?
The very last point, maintenance
Oh.
needs will be tracked and addressed through the county's tracking system and responded to in a timely manner in keeping with annual budget cycles and cognizant of users' needs.
Sorry, where's that?
The very last point in
Well, there you go.
operations and maintenance. So can you just hang on for a second? I just want to jot something down before I forget. I just answered my own questions there. So years ago, nigh on when I was a grasshopper, there used to be, there was somebody who is no longer employed with the county, not that that matters. I think Pam now has that job. And there was a database and where people could call in and say, you know, something needed fixing, or there was something of note, or there was encroachment on a certain habitat that was important. A bit of a public heads up portal. And I know that was being kept up by, I think it was, well, it doesn't matter who it was. And I don't know if that's still happening. So Robert, is Pam still managing that tracking system?
Yes, so calls and information come in various ways. On our website, county website, on the rail trail, there's actually a link for concerns that a number of people do use, and that comes into the county. People can link in road concerns or any other sort of concerns, but there's actually a specific rail trail link that's under the rail trail website. You also get phone calls and concerns, or just general emails. So there's a number of ways that they come in. We address those. We use our mesh system that, just like you mentioned with the roads, we enter that in so that we get staff out to look at the issues if there's some sort of concern, like a priority or urgent matter, to get those things addressed. And then on maybe sort of more policy type emails or questions about things, then there'll be a response generated from there.
So would it be appropriate then, Robert, to say maintenance needs will be tracked and addressed through the county's mesh system and responded to in a timely manner in keeping with annual budget cycles and cognizant of users' needs?
I guess it's one of those ones, if we're trying to keep it generic, because the mesh system could change in the few years.
Right, okay.
You just want to keep that it's being tracked and being done. And sorry, if I could circle back just for one quick second on an update to council. The rail trail typically goes to council and not committee of the whole. Would the report be fine to bring that? Then we wouldn't need a late report or whatnot if we bring that to the end of this month. Back on the surface regarding granite screenings versus limestone. I do know the granite screenings are more expensive than limestone, not necessarily meaning that it's a better product. So again, as you noted, I'm new to this rail trail stuff, so I do need to do the research and be able to provide information to the roundtable, but also to council.
Yeah, I mean, Liz, it's up. I mean, you're the warden, but I don't know. I don't think that there's any urgency necessarily. I mean, the work is currently underway. It's not like Robert's going to suddenly, tell the contractors to stop their work, unfortunately. But and do we need that information? And we're not going to meet again about this before then.
Oh, I think we can wait until county council. I mean, if this group wants it at committee of the whole, then fine. But I think we can wait. It gives Robert a little bit more time. And we're not going to meet, I don't think, between now and then. So county council.
County council.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that prevents the late addition to the agenda. So, okay, so we've got, so saying that those needs will be tracked and addressed through the county's tracking system. Andrea, that suits what you're looking for in terms of keeping that two-way communication open with the public for their concerns or issues that need addressing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. My apologies, Nathan.
That's okay. And then the very last sentence to me just dribbled off into no man's land. So perhaps it should say that maintenance activities shall be carried out to be consistent with the goals and objectives and guiding principles. Again, we're circling back on ourselves from the earlier sections. Otherwise, I don't know what else to say, because we haven't established any hard and fast design criteria and standards, other than we want it to be as good as it possibly can be with the money that we have.
Mhm.
Andrea?
Well, I thought we did it. I mean, if we've only met a couple times, and it, like you say, it's a while, but I thought we did review that a little bit with Craig in terms of the design criteria does lay out the width of the trail, the sort of how far back we even cut the brush.
Yeah, you're right.
So I goals, objectives, and design criteria. I'd like it all in there, as
Well,
opposed to
then-
taking design criteria out, because otherwise, like some places they'll say, oh, a trail needs to be 10 feet wide, and other places it's 12 or 14. So we have it, and I don't want to throw out that yet unless we
Okay.
want to review that.
So what we can do then is we can leave this in, and then add, seeing as we're changing and moving and creating sections left, right, and center. We can, and you're right, Andrea, that information about its width and etc. is somewhere in the original. Pull that out, and then that's the nesting dolls for this. But we need to have a section called design criteria and standards that will just simply lay out the current practice, right?
Like an appendix A, whatever.
I would just add
Or
it
just-
to, I would just make a new section.
Okay. And maybe, Robert, just again, no rush, but to bring yourself up to speed, because you are the public works guy, is just to have a review of what that design criteria lays out. I don't think it's overly complicated, but it holds us to why we brush a certain distance back. It holds us to a sort of standard, which is what you had said in the first place. But I do like adding goals and objectives.
So what we'll do is we'll work on, it might be, so this current section, this is the fun part. Section 5 might be design criteria and standards. Section 6 becomes operations because it speaks to design standards. And then section 7 would be enforcement. Just bear with me here. Section 7, that might lay out a little better. It might follow a little better. And then that makes that 9. And the new section would be 5. Where did I write that down? New section number 5. There, okay. Thank you for that. Okay, then we have to look at special permits. So if you go, this is the seesaw back and forth. If you go to some previous page somewhere.
Oh, Carol, just one page up. It's in there twice, so you can look to the left, just one page up in the.
Oh yeah, there it is. Yep. Special permits. So I think there's still, there is still a need to have the special permit part in there. I don't think these days we're getting many, but we have in the past for specific events. There was the Cord for a while, there was Katie's Run for a while. And somebody, if we want to also add in marketing and promotion, then there may be more events that would like to hold their activities on the trail, thus continuing the need for special permits. Does the language that's in there make sense, Liz?
Well, and I just wondered, for instance, there was some work that Minden Hills was doing and they needed access, vehicular access over a section of the trail. Did they need to get a special permit or not? Did we just say, okay?
No, we didn't. They didn't get a permit because it wasn't an event. So that's a good point. To complete approved tasks. Special permits will be recognized as exceptions to the above for limited use of motorized vehicles required to, like, what's approved tasks? Or I should say, or something to hold events. Shouldn't it?
It should, yes, but we also need to consider that there are other times when we need to make exceptions.
Well, it does say individuals who require this exemption must apply for a special permit. And then it provides some examples. So that's actually awkward. That's awkward language there. We can fix that. Consideration, oh, there's the events. Consideration will be made for special events if acceptable by whom? You know, if you want to have a march on World Naked Gardening Day, who gets to say yes or no for that?
County council. Oh yay, what a decision to make.
But does council, so again, think back to Liz, the things we've done in Algonquin Highlands, where council's had a conversation wherein it sets the parameters that provides the framework within which staff can make the decision. That's the way it should. County council shouldn't be deciding if there's going to be a march on World Naked Gardening Day, but county council maybe needs to have a conversation about the parameters so that staff know what to do around that.
It still comes back to county council one way or the other, but yeah, how it's worded is important.
Andrea?
And we also need to say organizations as well as individuals, organizations, or I don't know if that would include municipalities or not.
Yeah, Andrea?
Just a comparison with Dicer, for instance, we used to years ago approve every event each year, each time, and then we've ixnayed that. So again, put the parameters, particularly around Head Lake Park, when we used to have, pretty much an event every weekend in the summer. If it was the original event, would be approved by council, basically making sure it's keeping in line with sort of what we considered a good event, not for profit, that type of thing. Doesn't matter. Then if it was year over year, it was completely with staff. So that's how we deal with it, is that if it's a new event, for instance, in Head Lake Park, it needs approval from council. Staff do all the preliminary work before it comes to council. Yes, that weekend is available. This is what they're going to provide. We have park use agreements. So new event comes to council, returning events don't need to. Staff deal with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction.
It helps because the councillors have an opportunity to see if it aligns with what they're going to do. As if it was, well, a good example was we had a Potapalooza festival that was proposed, which was all things cannabis, and we said no, that we didn't feel that was a good family use. It was legal already at the time. People want to get information and educate. They were promoting this education information. Yeah, well, you can go into any store now, and that's part of their responsibility too. And the stores were just opening up. So we said no to that. Whereas we say yes every year to da 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 da. But we don't have to say yes every year. Now it's a thing that's been returning is just all completely through staff.
So then and so thank you for that. And I think we need to again keep our mental parking lot list. I don't know, and maybe Robert can find out what is the current. I just don't remember what the current approval process is for securing a permit for an event, because someone has to say yes. So we're back to the same thing. So are there so few events that they can just come to county council and it doesn't matter? Or do we want to have staff create some sort of framework where county council has a discussion about what types of events it will allow on the rail trail, and then allow staff to make the decision within that framework? Or do what Andrea said and have all events come to county council the first time, and subsequent returning events can just be approved by staff if they're the same event? I mean, either way, that conversation has to be at county council, because it would be a slight change, I think, in the way it's currently done.
Through the chair, we do have an existing process and a link on the website for people that want permits. The Corduroy event just happened last month, but I don't have the policy in front of me to let you know when it has to come to council. That one was held at the, handled at the staff level because that's an event that's happened before. But so I'll follow up on that for you. Yeah,
so you'll let us know?
Yes.
Because we could be talking about something that's already in place in that manner. So we'll find out. Good. Wow, there's lots of blue writing all over my page now. So this for special permits, we're just gonna maybe massage that existing language. Robert's gonna clarify the current process. And we just need a little massaging there. So I think we're okay there. Can we move on to section, which is now going to be section 7, enforcement? So there's nothing in there because we hadn't, this is where we left off last time. This is where we left off a year ago. The next meeting we were supposed to have would have been enforcement and risk management. And whatever else is after that. So I guess the question and development opportunities. Enforcement, the language that is in the current plan is to the left. But again, there, it's recommended that the county prepare a bylaw. Do we have a bylaw identifying those things? There's your speed limits, Liz, but I don't know if they're current.
Yeah. And there,
You know what? We don't have, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, you were saying, Liz?
oh, just that the speed limit appears here to be the same for everybody.
And I don't think it is.
Well, there was something that we need to check.
Yeah, because I'm sure that as part of the community consultation, I know that there was then a signage committee and Mark Coleman, who at that time worked for Algonquin Highlands. I remember him being on that committee and because he had a huge Parks and Rec background. So, and that's why there's signs up there now. I know the signs up there now have different icons and different speeds for, like, you can't ride your horse at 100 miles an hour.
Well, you might if you could, but
You might if you could. So I think, so the proposal was that the enforcement program include 3 parts. I don't even think that, the OPP SAVE team is doing a lot of work these days. So SAVE was snowmobile, ATV, something in boats, I think. So we're going to need a little work on that because the speed limits have changed, and who is doing enforcement? I don't know. So we have the county bylaw guy who, in theory, can be called to address complaints, but he always tells us he doesn't get any complaints. I think we need to check with the ATV Association to see what they're doing.
and the Snowmobile Association.
Yes, HCSA to see what they do, and OPP.
Through the chair,
Yes, sir.
I've had regular conversations because some of the complaints that we've received in through the website and whatnot have been regarding use and speed and noise. So I have had regular communications with the OPP and they have been doing patrols this year. They've even done training. So they would like to do more, and with COVID and some of their limitations on having a partner, we've also communicated and connected them with the ATV Association for volunteers, so there might be ride-alongs. So it's in progress. It certainly needs some improvement, but there has been some patrol being done. And there also is the thought that the new bylaw officers, if the shoreline patrol, shoreline, your favorite topic, Warden, is that there might be a place for those bylaw officers, if they're hired, that they could also assist on the rail trail at off times.
So that lays the groundwork for, because programs change. It's great to hear that the OPP has been doing work, wants to do some more, and also has been in touch with the other organizations. But that's not necessarily a static situation. So based on what I just heard, I think this is another place for a bit of a motherhood statement that, you know, enforcement will be, you know, through partnerships, because we can't say that one organization will do ABC and another organization will do XYZ, because that might change from season to season or year to year based on their own resources. So we somehow have to craft a bit of a generalized statement to say that we work with a number of partners, including to undertake, I mean, it almost sounds like nonsense, but to undertake a variety of programs to ensure the safety and appropriate conduct of all users on the trail, something like that. Dave?
Carol, is that something that we could maybe take to CPAC and see what, if there is something maybe they can assist with, or maybe they would try as a pilot, or we could find out exactly what they are doing?
Are you
Um,
doing?
Well, I was going to say we could accept CPACs on hiatus pending the outcome of the safety and well-being plan, and at the end of which there will be a detachment board instead of a CPAC. But I mean, yeah, we can check with Dan and say, help us with the language on this.
Mhm.
Yep.
And that's maybe what staff could do is check with HCSA and HATVA and OPP and say, we're trying to craft some language here, and can we count on your commitment without defining it in a partnership? Because I don't know what else we can say. The OPP can patrol as long as they're not called away to some, big emergency somewhere. So we can't commit anybody to anything except a commitment. It sounds like planning to plan.
Planning to plan a plan.
Yeah, that's right. Andrea?
Well, sometimes you end up finally with a plan, and it does take time. But this is a bit of a murky thing. Like even motorized trail use can occur from 10 a.m. to dusk. You don't think snowmobiles are on there after dusk? Yeah, like, oh, I didn't even know that existed. So I think what we have to know is, what are we enforcing? And different groups enforce different things. So we may have a snowmobile traveling at the correct speed during daylight hours, but there's the member, someone from the HCSA is doing enforcement on trail passes, making sure that they have a valid pass. That's got nothing to do with us. So there's different rules and different people that will be enforcing those different rules, and then we better approve what the rules are. I did not know about that time limit.
I see, that's the thing, is that the document that we're working from
Is
so out of date
yes,
that it's really only there as a guiding reference to say this is what they were recommending 145 years ago, and what should it say now. So that's why we need to check with OPP, HCSA,
Yeah.
we need to find out what the current speed limits are, back to Liz's question from some time ago. And the language needs to just say that, the enforcement shall be undertaken among these groups. Once we find out what it is they do, in the spirit of collaboration and safety. Again, it's a bit of a motherhood statement, but just it has regard for the collaborative spirit. Because we can't tell them what to do. What enforcement HCSA does or HATVA does may be contained in the agreements the county signs with them.
but it might be another Saturday that the OPP is doing an enforcement checking for drinking and driving.
Yeah.
So, it's so I just think, and I do think I sure if I lived in a home along the rail trail, I would be thrilled if all motorized vehicles stopped at dusk. But I think we should need to review that as well. That's realistic.
Yeah, I don't think that's.
I mean,
Okay,
you
so
could
that
put
needs-
11 p.m. or, if we're going to put hours, we should put realistic hours.
You know what? You can't enforce it because
Yeah.
there's nobody there. We face that all the time, right? Put bylaws in place or put rules in place that are unachievable. So don't bother.
Yeah, I read that this morning.
So. Okay, so I've jotted down what everyone said, and I'll circle back. The dog's gonna start barking again. I'll circle back with Robert just about what I think everyone has just said about who needs to be contacted, or maybe it's just looking at the two agreements for the two associations. Liz?
I was just thinking rather than using the word dusk, we've got noise bylaws that specify certain times that maybe it could kind of coincide with those hours. I'm
My
not sure
my snowmobile's not noisy. What are you talking about? See, I think you have to stay away from that stuff because you put in there in keeping or inconsistent with the noise bylaw. And someone says there's two snowmobiles racing around out there behind my house and it's 2 a.m. Are we going to send somebody out there? Who are we going to send? That's where I think we have to, we have to, going back to all departments will work together for promotion. There's an opportunity to do more public education, and it's nice to be nice and be a good neighbor, and this stuff all has to circle back together. Have regard for other users, slow down around horses, all of those things. Andrea?
One thing that is dated and probably never even happened is citizen trail volunteers.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's that? I don't know what that is.
I think there used to be, or remember the plan took a tremendous amount of public input and crafted it into suggestions on how to best manage the trail. I don't remember if there were trail volunteers, but it doesn't matter anymore because we don't have them. And
Yeah.
in today's day and age, I would never support just sending good old folks who are well-intentioned out to try and tell people how to conduct themselves on the rail trail.
Well, same follows for the warden program.
Yes.
You know, I mean, we have a county warden in place all the time, and I don't think anybody's expecting that individual to go out and.
No, it's not you. It's the HCSA did have a trail warden program for many years. I don't believe it's in place anymore. I think for a lack of volunteerism.
I think they do check passes, but again, that's in the research that we do. They do random checks for, making sure that people have the appropriate pass to be on the trails here, whether it be the rail trail or any of the trails in Haliburton County. So I think they do that type of thing.
Well, let's find out.
Yep.
Carol, I would like to know under what authority, like who would they be working, who would be volunteering for the county, for the police, or?
Nobody. I wouldn't support putting volunteers out there. Like, it's almost like going back to community policing programs where somebody in a yellow vest is going to tell me to stop looking in the windows. Like, who are you?
Yeah.
I think the society has changed so much that I would not, we have working alone policy and legislation for municipal employees. And I just wouldn't want to get involved in any program where, despite all good intentions, that any well-intended person could be put at risk. So again, I just think, like, I just kind of go, scribble through all that. We'll just rewrite our own based on our current relationships with bylaw, municipal bylaw, HCSA, HATVA, OPP. I think those are the resources we have, and there maybe need to have a conversation with those groups to say, what are you guys going to bring to the table around this that's current and doable?
So they would have to have proof of liability, etc., to even have anything to do with the trail.
Yeah, I think that I think a couple of the answers, not necessarily a lot of the answers, but I think some of the answers we're looking for are currently contained in the agreements with those two organizations. So we need to look at those and talk to OPP, and then we can circle back on this particular area. Andrea.
Because we're a hands-on working group and you offered to do something earlier, which I totally can't remember, but that's okay. But you said, I'll do that. So we don't dump too much onto staff. Do you want a volunteer to speak to the snowmobile club and somebody else to speak to somebody else, the ATV club, just to see what they are doing currently?
Yeah, we could do that. I would. Is there any value in having the same person have both those conversations? I think the first step would be to look at the information might be in the agreements. Look at the agreements.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you want staff? Like, do you want staff to do that, or Robert's sort of half got his hand up?
Why couldn't that request come from this committee? Sorry, I didn't mean to jump into it.
No, go ahead. I think we're pretty casual around this.
I can't see why it couldn't come through this committee. The request through, and then Robert can go and ask for it.
I think the concern is that everybody's up to their eyeballs, and I think Andrea's just looking to alleviate some of the workload that is probably on Robert's shoulders now. And additionally, and no disrespect to Robert, we did have a little conversation yesterday, and he's mentioned again that he is fairly new to the community and he doesn't have the history and maybe know the people just yet. So, and I'm not trying to throw you under the bus or talk about you like you're not here, Robert. What do you have to say about that?
Maybe what would be helpful if I had a counselor assisting with, maybe we could do as a team, because I have had discussions with the ATV club plus Dan at the OPP, plus we have the agreement. So there might be maybe a coordinated effort if somebody wanted to work with me, and maybe we get a better response or a more thorough response. We had a committee member doing that, but I could assist.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's really a matter of saying, what enforcement do you do and writing it down? What enforcement would you like to do and writing it down? What enforcement could you do and writing? That's all it is. It's just a fact finding mission. So are there any volunteers to help Robert with that,
Yeah.
Andrea?
Yeah, that's what I was proposing.
There you go. So, I mean, you guys could just maybe set up a couple of Zoom meetings, set up a Zoom meeting with HCSA and HATFA and OPP and bring back what they say.
Yeah.
And then we'll use what they say to craft the language. Yeah, good job. Write that down.
Carol, if I may.
Yep.
I just, Andrea, I guess I was a little bit confused and I apologize because I thought when you said volunteer, I thought you met somebody off the street that was volunteering, not one of our committee or
Me.
one of us.
No, because Carol volunteered to do something. She says, I'll take that on to do such and such. Like I say, that was at the beginning of the meeting and I can't remember. I was volunteering for I said, we're a working group, a hands-on working group. And I do not want to just say very cognizant of staff's time.
Yeah.
When it's something that I can call John Enright. Like, so Robert and I will chat later. We'll come back to the next roundtable with this information for you. Check.
Good job. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so stay tuned there. So risk management is, going back to the original plan. Risk management has always been there. We have talked about risk management a number of times. When Craig was with the county, he did express concerns around the fact that risk management it's a big deal. It's also an important issue. I haven't got the slightest idea what that looks like. Based on our conversations today, I've talked about risk management could include, as Dave noted, just again, a little piece in there that talks about, public health recommendations at any time shall rule the day. Sorry, the dog has decided to roll upside down in his bed and tell us a story.
And rule the day.
And we could put some conduct in there, but risk management, I don't know, Michelle or Robert, who at the county is our risk management expert? I know in Algonquin Highlands, our risk management person is Chris Card, our Parks, Rec and Trails manager. Is there somebody at the county who has knowledge, experience, or designation in risk management?
Not sure who might be our current expert in that.
I might have to go on mute. Because risk management is a life unto itself. So we need to do something there. So it talks about design and construction details and insurance and safety, speed limits, seasons. Some of this stuff maybe has been captured elsewhere, but not specifically in relation to risk management. So we could pull those pieces out. Education information program, safety, speed limits. I think we're ours. We've, etiquette, rights of way. Fencing. And the fencing issue, I think, has been resolved. There were some adjacent landowners, there were some fencing challenges, but I think they were resolved a number of years ago. Annual maintenance schedule and enforcement. So there are already, so right in that language right there is contained a number of things that accepting the conversation we just had about enforcement. I think we've probably talked about them. But I mean, it could be as simple as the county of Haliburton. Does the county maintain insurance for the rail trail? I would assume it does. Does it?
Yeah, I think so. And I would think that the person that's responsible for that is our corporate services director.
Okay, so this needs to be, I mean, I'm not a risk management person, but this needs to be a statement wherein, safety, it's about safety and being aware of and adequately managing potential risks for users. And based on the language on the left and the things that I just circled, notwithstanding a couple of them, most of them are addressed elsewhere in generalized statements, but this could be the place. I don't know if we ought to have a specific risk management plan for the rail trail. Maybe we should, but I don't know who answers that question. Maybe the insurance company does. Andrea?
So I was actually thinking that now that we are tweaking the plan or making proposals to change that, you can see almost so many of those things that come out. However, just having an overall general statement about risk management, I would suspect that perhaps we should talk to the CAO about that, of what language that he would suggest is in there in general. I mean, we don't necessarily list risk management on our roads. For instance, on a county road, what we do is we have minimum maintenance standards, and we have everything documented: when the snowplow went out, how much salt sand was out, like all of those things are in procedures. So is risk management just inherent in everything that the county does? So I would check. I'm going to punt this to Mike Rutter, who's not even on the screen, or suggest that we do.
Yeah, well, we can ask Mike. I mean, I think he'll provide some direction there. And you're right, it may be a case of simply a statement wherein there's an acknowledgement and a commitment to undertake safety through these various initiatives, about speed limits and construction and maintenance and reporting system for damage or complaints or repairs. Liz?
Well, and I'm just looking at the two recommendations at the end of that section where it talks about us extending liability insurance to cover this recreational. I'm not sure what that's supposed to say. Permitted uses, or I'm not sure. And the volunteers who participate, like what volunteers? Whose volunteers?
Well, you've got to remember, this goes back to a time when the plan was developed and there was this grandiose idea that there would be volunteer trail wardens, just good folks who would wander around and say, you're going too fast and you shouldn't do this, and do you have a permit? And which I think in 2021 is not doable or recommendable.
So I'm guessing by us forwarding this concern or a section on to our CAO that we'll continue to talk about this and what we might or might not want to do.
Yeah, I don't think we're asking the CAO to do it. We're asking the CAO if he thinks we need a specific rail risk management plan for the trail, or if a generalized statement that speaks to the other aspects elsewhere in the document is sufficient. And not to abdicate our responsibility, but we also don't want to double dip. So,
Carol, when we're doing that, would it be prudent to maybe have, I guess, John Ewart or a lawyer look at that with Mike?
I said talk to CAO/insurer. I'm sure that Mike would probably recommend that the insurance company, the insurers, be contacted.
Yeah.
So my apologies. I have my colleague has decided that it's time to stop laying on the floor.
Colleague.
Just know you're getting a lap dog.
You know.
Oh my God. He's just getting so big.
No, he's enormous. He's 7 months old. So he is my alarm clock for timing, and I did at the beginning say we didn't want to be here for 2 hours. So if we can move the last section. So we've got a lot to talk about risk management. So let's just bounce it back with Mike, see what he suggests we do from there, and then we'll circle back. And the last one is a new section. And it says on the left that it was woven into the original plan in several areas, and making a separate section that reflects the community engagement and the decisions of council should keep us moving forward. And there's just a bunch of stuff that we can talk about. Some of it also crosses over into risk management and signage and safety and whatnot. And I think if I recall correctly, the idea was just to acknowledge and commit to being continually aware of opportunities, no matter what they look like. So we'd have to find some language around that to say, yeah, we're eyes wide open. There's lots of things that are changing. The community is changing. Opportunities can come and go, and that our commitment is to be attentive to them, and what they might be. Some of them are underway, like the rest areas and the interpretive nodes. That's contained in the ISIP funding, isn't it, Robert? And you're working with the museum people?
Yes, well, rest areas is benches, and I'm not sure if we're going all the way to the nodes like was in the master plan, where the intent was maybe individual signs, but that's open to discussion too on a node versus individual signs along the trail.
Well, we can solve that by just saying interpretive signs, because signs can be in nodes or they can be standalone. So that solves that pretty quickly. So it's maybe a bit late into this meeting too. I think we need to put our heads around this section. It was meant to just account for and acknowledge what's been done to date, and that we are continuing to look at things and work toward improvements through partnerships, funding opportunities. I know it just had an email from Pamela about another funding opportunity that's available that I think Liazando or Robert, you'll hear from her about that for planning. I mean, money is money, and I think we need to make sure we're continually attentive to that kind of thing. But I confess that in section, which is that this is now going to be section 9, I got nothing. I don't really know what to say about that. So the other part of it is there were a number of suggestions, tremendous number of suggestions made through the last community engagement process. And it does say on the left there, it should be cross-referenced with the community engagement matrix for additional wish lists and outcomes. We have achieved a number of things that came from that community engagement process, and there's a tremendous number of things that are left undone. It's possible that they're not relevant or needed anymore. So I would say if there's anything, the homework, because everyone loves homework because everyone is looking for a job, is to review, we need to review that matrix and be prepared to circle back on if you think the section should be there. I mean, maybe the section doesn't need to be there. The idea was to link the community engagement outcomes to now, so that we.
It's okay. It's okay.
Right, puppy. So that we can keep moving forward. And don't lose, see, one of my frustrations, and I think it's shared, is that we without a lot of pushing, we seem to have kind of lost track of a lot of the recommendations that the public wanted us to consider. And there has to be some mechanism to keep them moving, to keep them under review. And so maybe this, Andrea, to your point previously, maybe this section is an appendix. Maybe that makes more sense if this is an appendix to say, hey, you know, the development opportunities are contained in Appendix A, which is reflective of the community consultation, which itself could be a chart that says, you know, the public suggested this. Oh, that's done. The public suggested this. Ooh, we can't afford that. Or the public suggested that. It's in progress. So maybe it would work better that way, because then you're not changing the main document, but the appendix can be continually updated.
I don't disagree. It reminds me of the Dysart's cultural resource plan that we update to reflect the plan, but it doesn't change the plan. So there's now this odd addendum, appendix, whatever you want to call it, other document that is sort of a status report of where things are. It is, and so, and we add to it as a, you know. So I like that idea personally. So it's not actually changing the plan. I do want to just check before we just wrap up fully, is the this whole process that we're going through, this is a public meeting, so there may be people watching us today. Eventually we'll get it to county council, which will be called a draft, or update draft of the plan. You know, we'll hopefully stamp a date on it. Will there be opportunity for public members to speak to our draft plan before it comes to county council, or when it comes to county council, I really should say, before we adopt it as a final update?
Yeah, and we did talk about that before, and I do know way back in the beginning there was, I think it might have been I'm not going to name names, but HCSA had said, we'd like to have some input. And I happy to have that. I think people will be surprised at how generic and high level this document is going to become. But that's fine, because I think it's important to have that this is not the place to have a discussion about changing the uses on the trail. If you want to have that conversation, you go to county council. This is about, does the language suit, based on the decisions and the current operational practices, does the language suit, and does it cover what we need to do on this trail? So we need to make that very clear.
Yes, and hopefully you have all along. So as an example, sometimes something like this, just say it came to the committee of the whole, and then 2 weeks later it's a bylaw or we're passing something. I just would like to see that there's an opportunity, whether for written, written comments, not necessarily like a full-on public forum, but it's on just a little pause in between the draft coming to county council and actually passing it, because we're for dedicated county councillors, but there still might be something that we have missed as we've gone through this with a fine-tooth comb. The people watching or following this process may say, oh, I wish Andrea had said that, or Carol was so close on such and such. So
yeah, I mean, we could have missed important pieces, and I think that asking those who are interested or have a vested interest in the trail and its uses, that they do have a look at it. I will have to talk about what that might look like and what the timing is. I will reiterate that we need to make sure that people understand that the purpose is very specific. This is about, does the document read correctly? Not, someone might say, well, I've got 1 million years experience in risk management, I can help you out there, or I have some suggestions there. Great, thank you very much. But if anybody thinks this is a chance to come and say, I hate the way the county manages the trail, that's not what this is for. If you don't like the way the county manages the trail, then make an appointment, talk to county council. This is not what this group's for. So what do you think that would look like then? Like, do you want, I don't necessarily want to put out a public call, because then you're going to there will be misunderstanding, and we'll spend more time wading through the wrong comments and getting accused of shutting down public input than inviting specific groups to have a look at it, I think.
So for due process, I'll backtrack. How about if, when this group is finished and we feel we have a document that we want to send to county council, it comes to county council in draft form to be passed at a bylaw the following month. It's on a public agenda, it's a public document. If somebody wants to comment on it as it's out in the public purview before we actually pass a final, then that's what I was thinking. I don't know if that's the right process.
Would there be a bylaw for this? Would we need a bylaw? I don't think we need a bylaw to adopt this.
No.
Okay, not a bylaw, but perhaps if it comes to draft form, but we suggest that we just save it in draft. We've done that before, save something in draft form, even our exotic, well, that is a bylaw, mind you, but what if we just bring it to county council in draft form, ask county council for comments, but not pass it that day? Sorry, Liz.
Liz, go ahead.
I still think that it should go to the committee of the whole. That's where our discussions like that take place. But there's no reason why it has to go to the next county council meeting to be adopted. We can agree at committee of the whole that we want to receive input from, specific stakeholders and allow that opportunity to take place, within a set period of time. Like, we could give it a month. We've been months already. So, a little bit of delay, providing that opportunity, I don't think it's going to hurt.
Okay, but I think what we all agree is we're updating an outdated document. We are not reinventing the rail trail. And I know I'm going to say that 100 more times throughout any more discussions that we have. I welcome input from various user groups, but I hesitate for this to become a community-wide feedback request, because we're going to get suggestions from people that are well-intentioned but misplaced. And then the concern, it feels like ever since the pandemic, is when you say to somebody, well, that's not the question we're asking. Often the automatic response is, you're muzzling public input. It's like, no, you're just not, you're off piste, you're not in the right place. So we just have to make sure that we're very clear that of what the purpose of this little working group is, that it's not about changing the uses, it's about updating a really outdated document to reflect current uses and strategies and operational mandates. So as long as we can do that, committee of the whole in draft form, out for comment to the specific user groups. So, I mean, we're not going to deny any member of the public to have a look at it, but we don't need 3,000 people looking at an updated document, and then final adoption by county council.
Yes, and I agree with Liz. I just didn't know the order of things particularly, but if it came so when I say out for comment, it's not like in a survey form. It's just because it was on a public agenda and we aren't recommending to pass it in 2 weeks. That's it. Yeah.
And we can reiterate at that time that we're not opening up the debate on the rail trail. We're just updating the plan, which is 100 years out of date. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, so there's some takeaways for sure. I'll circle back with Robert on a couple of them. Andrea, you're going to talk to Robert about some of the risk management stuff, talking to some of those groups who currently have a hand in, starting with the agreements with both HATVA and HCSA to see if that, and maybe what we want to do means that those agreements need to be modified slightly. I don't know, but you guys can look at that. And Robert, I guess, or maybe Liz is going to check with the CAO around the potential for a risk management program. Do we need a specific risk management program for the rail trail? And is it but insurance is one specific question, or will it suffice to just have a risk management statement and then ensure that those high points are in fact included elsewhere, plugged into the document right through it?
Okay, 2 questions before we adjourn. So is someone specifically going to, or I guess I'm going back to Robert and Michelle about this request for the Friends of the Rail Trail report. Are we going to ask for that again?
Pamela, if you're watching, can we please have your report? Yeah, I mean, we said we would, so let's have a look at it.
Yeah, I do have an email response from her from June that I just can't pull up right now. So if you'd like, I could share it with the group and we'll recontact Pamela to see if anything's changed since then. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. And the other thing is if there is a funding opportunity, it would be nice to find out what it is, and if it's something that we can apply for, we should consider that.
So I forwarded that email string to you. So it should be, if you just go back a day or so, it should be.
I see it. Yeah, I saw it this morning.
Yeah, but I mean, so I asked Pamela, I said, because this group isn't, all that funding and partnership stuff, all that development stuff lives at the county table. We're just working on this document, that she should circle back with you and or Robert. And she said, thanks for that. So you should, it's planning, it's money for planning. So. Okay, so that being said, off to the next meeting. The other thing too is keep some ideas floating around your mind for what we're going to call this thing, because I don't think it's a master plan. I think it's more like guiding principles, but we don't have to talk about that now. So we'll try and have a meeting in a month or so. Does that suit? Meeting in a month, so you guys, the staff folks, can remind us about that. I don't know whether myself or Robert will make the changes that we talked about today, but he and I can circle back on that and get this back out.
I remembered what you said you would do. at the beginning of the meeting was just the historic context. The little very brief blurb at the beginning of how the county.
Well, I'd have to ask because I don't know when it was a railway. I kind of was born then. And I don't know when it was decommissioned and transferred. So that stuff's all somewhere in a report. There's that's already been done and lives somewhere in some staff report to county council, somewhere in the annals of time. So it could be plucked from that. So maybe we could ask staff to just do a little poke around for a little bit of a historical review that then can be precede down to what makes sense for this particular document. Anything else for the good of the rail trail today? Yes, ma'am.
When you say we should meet in a month, because it is hard to doodle poll, should we look at our calendars and try, or should we just not?
You guys, there's 6 of us. It really shouldn't be that hard.
That's what I'm thinking. And I do like that it's keeping us on task.
Let's look at
Well,
November.
November 9th or 11th, because it's committee of the whole on the 10th.
So Dysart and Highlands East, Dave's on mute, but we're both in committee of the whole for our.
I have my council on the 9th.
Yeah.
16th.
So the 11th. Oh, the 11th isn't November. Remembrance Day.
11th is okay.
But
11th.
it's Remembrance Day.
That's Remembrance Day.
Oh, 16th?
Yes.
16th. Robert and Michelle, are you thus far okay on the 16th for the rail trail meeting?
9 a.m.
No,
9?
Robert's looking.
1 p.m.
Wait, Robert's looking.
I seem to have something to do with union job evaluations on the 16th. I might be able to change that, but I'm just not sure at this moment.
Can we pencil in the 16th pending your review of that? I found 1 p.m. We all seem to have good energy levels, but it's up to you guys for time. Look at Dave. 10 a.m. How about 10 a.m.
One's fine.
Anybody? Next person who says a time is what we're going to write down.
1 p.m.
Just not after dinner. Not at 6 p.m.
No, God, no.
I won't be there after dinner.
Well, the shoreline public ones have been good, but and that suits a lot of people. But it's like I start to drop, and it's late.
Okay, so we're saying pending Robert's checking of the details for his possible commitment that day, we are saying Haliburton County Rail Trail Roundtable will reconvene on November 16th at 1 p.m. Okay. Next meeting date. What else is on the agenda? I guess we're just at adjournment. I guess I'd like Michelle. You've got something there. We need a mover and a seconder for this discussion, or do we need something?
I can read if you'd like what we have crafted, and if you'd like some changes, I'm happy to do any amendments.
Yeah, if you could read that, please.
Certainly. Be it resolved that the Haliburton County Rail Trail Steering Committee receives for information the draft Rail Trail Master Plan Review Chart, and that the steering committee accepts the proposed changes as discussed. And finally, that the steering committee continue to review, update, and finalize the language of the Rail Trail Master Plan for County Council to review.
Do you have a comment, or are you moving, Liz?
No, I have a comment.
Go ahead.
As discussed and amended,
And amended. Yes, that's right.
and I'm more than happy to move that.
Moved by Liz, seconded by Andrea. You've heard that resolution with the change, the addition of as amended. All in favor?
Dave?
Dave's frozen there. Okay, that's carried.
I was froze up solid.
You were. We've set the next meeting date. May I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn today's meeting? Dave and Liz.
Be it resolved that the October 6, 2021 meeting of the Haliburton County Rail Trail Steering Committee now adjourned.
All in favor? Gary, thank you. Great discussion, folks. Thank you. We'll get there. I know it's slow, but thanks, everybody.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. And thanks for all your hard work, Carol. You're doing a great job.
We'll keep moving. Thanks.